Robert Ward is my name. I'm the Marketing Director here at the National College of Ireland. And on behalf of the College, you're very welcome here. Don't forget, #GoFurther with NCI. We're delighted to partner with Independent News and Media. Mitchell O'Gorman is going to talk to us. He's the Campaign Manager at INM, and he's going to give us some insights into the world of digital and advertising.
Hello everyone. My name is Mitchell O'Gorman and I am the Campaign Manager with Independent News and Media. So I look after the big digital advertising campaigns that come into Independent News and Media. I work with a brilliant team that comprise a native content creator, a campaign designer, social media manager. Also, we have a team of ad operations and an event manager and videographer, so we're a motley crew. So I'm just going to be looking at how technology is bringing advertisers and audiences together. I'm going to go way back to, I suppose, somebody that I would see as a kind of an early influencer, really, who kind of used a new funky technology to get the word out. Gutenberg's printing press came about in 1450 AD, and less than 70 years later, Martin Luther was nailing his 95 theses about how disappointed he was in the Catholic Church to the door of Wittenberg University. Very quickly it got taken down, and people used Gutenberg's printing press to create hundreds, thousands of copies of it. The Vatican couldn't really keep up. They really lost control of the communications around it. And thus began, or part of the beginnings of, the Reformation. So I think he's a really good example of an early social influencer who used technology to get his message viral out there. So fair play to that guy. So just, I suppose, looking at the kind of a more recent examples of how technology has influenced advertising. If you look at the top left there, the front cover of the Irish Independent, interestingly enough, front covers of the newspaper contained just ads, no editorial up until the 1960s. How those ads were taken in was over the phone, so you'd call in and somebody would be there at the phone and they'd write the copy, and that's how ads were taken in. If you wanted a colour ad up until the 1980s, plates had to be created, and it was actually all outsourced to the UK. So that's mad. So I suppose moving on from then, people taking ad orders over the phone. When the first fax machine was introduced into the independent newsroom, there was war. The trade unions got their knickers in a knot. They just saw it as replacing so much of the work that was going on, this newfangled technology. The father of the chapel, who was the head of the trade unions, actually went as far as pouring a bottle of 7-Up into the fax machine to stop it from working. So we move on. The internet, again, I suppose, was a massive evolution. If you look at this absolute beauty down the bottom there, looks like a designer vomited confetti over a black rectangle there. That is the first ever online banner ad. Isn't it a peach? So I suppose one of the first things you'll notice is that it doesn't have a brand on it. It was run on Wired.com in October 1994. The brand was actually AT&T. They didn't put their name to it because they weren't convinced that it was going to work. Such was the newfangledness of it. It did work. It worked amazingly well, in so much so that the click-through rate on that ad was 44%. So just to put that in context, the click-through rates that we see today across industry average is about 0.1%. The reason it was so high, obviously, it's aesthetically horrible, but there was literally nothing else to do on the internet in 1994. Just click that fella there. Social media, again, a whole massive sea change for advertisers, and it opened up the ability to demographically very closely target people by their interests, by their ages, by their gender, and then again mobile phones, smartphones and apps, again opening up advertisers to actually use some of the features of the smartphones, such as geolocation, to advertise to their audience. So just looking at the audience themselves and the impact of technology on the audience always moves quicker than the brands or the advertisers. They're always there first, and the advertisers will always follow. The new consumption habits of the audience I suppose data consumption is off the charts. This nice little infographic that we got from Domo on the right hand side. It's got some stunning stuff. This is every minute of a day. So YouTube users upload 72 hours of new video every minute. And the likes of WhatsApp, almost 350,000 photos are shared every minute. And also, I suppose, looking at new consumption habits and new technologies and new platforms, as Mick was talking about earlier on, and we'll talk about the next slide, the audience are using different platforms at different times of the day. And also, I suppose, there's been a kind of, with the advent of 4G, for example, on phones, a massive rise in video consumption and rich media consumption as well. So that's all good to note from an advertising perspective. In terms of increased choice, no longer do we have a case where 90% of the population in Ireland can be reached by one television channel. It's a case of, there's loads out there, both nationally and internationally. There's been a massive rise in kind of lean digital publisher startups and very kind of niche startups as well. So it's a hugely competitive world out there to try and get people's attention. And also, I suppose, the fortunate or unfortunate rise of clickbait as well. I came across, these boys started singing and Simon did the unthinkable. Wow. That was a piece about Simon Cowell actually putting some boys through to the next round of X Factor. So wow indeed. Wonderful bit of clickbait there. So I suppose just in terms of looking to kind of stand out, it's very competitive, and social media is helping some media organisations. And in terms of the audience, it's really empowered the audience. It started a two-way dialogue, but it's put a lot of the power back into the kind of hands of the audience, which is very interesting to note. So in terms of looking at the impact of technology then on advertisers, there's massive benefits to digital marketing, particularly in digital display ads for brands and for advertisers, particularly in terms of measurement. So they know how things are going almost straight away, and they can optimize campaigns as soon as they've got going. They can make tweaks, and you can test a couple of different versions of the ad against each other, see which one is performing better, run that out for the rest of the campaign. And there's new measurements being brought in, such as ad viewability. So an ad is only considered viewable if at least 50% of it has been seen for at least 1 second. So I suppose these are new measurements that have been brought in to create really good value for money for advertisers. I suppose another thing to note here when we're talking about digital display ads is the rise of ad blocking. There was a recent announcement there in relation to the iOS 9 release in Safari containing ad blocking within the browser. So obviously that's going to be a massive challenge for media organisations like ourselves. Adrian is going to talk a bit more about that a little bit later on. In terms of their adoption to technology, I think that advertisers and brands very closely fit the innovation adoption curve here up the top left. Very few of them, I suppose, would be seen as innovators. The majority of them would normally like to see a kind of a proven concept, and particularly proven in their industry. So us as a media organisation, when we're creating new technology, we need to single out those innovators and run really brilliant campaigns for them, but not only for them, but across the different industries that we can find that will allow us then to sell it a lot more to the people more to the kind of right-hand side of that curve. Slow reaction to consumer trends. So I say consumers are always there first, advertisers follow. I think a good example of this is, again, as Mick was saying, a lot of media brands, a lot of publishers would have passed the kind of 50% threshold with mobile. So now, a lot of organisations have most of their traffic coming through mobile. If you look at IAB's statistics from last year in terms of spend, advertisers are still spending 70% of their budget on desktop formats, even though most people now are on mobile. So I think, for those people who are looking at further education, a good way to spot where the opportunities are look at where consumers are at the moment and where advertisers really are not. And within that gap lies a lot of kind of growth areas and growth potential. The need for advertisers to offer genuine value. So I don't think that absolutely horrible ad earlier on offered really that much genuine value, and people are getting a lot more canny around display ads and becoming kind of ad blind. Advertisers need to offer genuine value, so that's the kind of rise in native advertising, which is advertising that looks and feels like part of the site, but also needs to offer very kind of genuine interesting, informative, or entertaining content to readers. Also the rise of experiential brands delivering great experiences and great rewards to their audiences as well. Advertisers and publishers is again something us as a media organisation can't ignore, because it's a reality. There are some organisations that are, writing the blog and trying to get that out and not having much success. But there are organisations and brands out there that are doing it brilliantly. We got our native content editor from Swide, which is the content arm of Dolce & Gabbana. Red Bull do it very well across video, across digital and print, and the likes of GoPro now as well. They don't need a marketing budget. They just create brilliant content themselves through their cameras. So I suppose it's something for us to kind of look out for and obviously be able to adapt our own kind of approach to it. Challenges in adopting social media. Brands are kind of clumsy in terms of having that kind of personality and engaging in that two-way dialogue. Not every brand, but even the biggest brands can get it wrong. McDonald's were looking to promote their hashtag MacD stories there for a very short while. Until all the stories started coming back. I found a toenail in my burger, this kind of stuff. So they shut it down. The good thing about McDonald's was that any brand should have a strategy in place, a contingency strategy, because things can go very, very wrong and get out of control. They quickly sponsored a kind of hashtag Meet the Farmers piece that really took over before that came an absolute disaster, although it was a bit of a disaster, let's be fair. And I suppose another kind of challenge, and I've just talked about where that gap is, another challenge is, say, instant messaging apps. Again, Snapchat and Instagram now have advertising platforms, but the likes of WhatsApp, whose founders have always been no ads, no games, no gimmicks. They have 800 million users on there. There's no advertisers there. It's probably one of the biggest gaps that we see at the moment. Facebook bought WhatsApp for $19 billion US. I'm sure they just didn't do it for the crack. So something's going to have to give there. So just in terms of kind of spotting those gaps, that's a pretty good example there. So how are actually media organisations and ourselves doing this at the moment, bringing audience and advertisers together through technology? Mick has talked about the kind of insights. It's so vital to really, really know your audience in depth for a media organisation. The likes of, say, advertisers becoming publishers, the competitive advantage we would have over them is really being able to drill down into our data, knowing about the range of our audience and the range of different kind of things that they are into. Social media, again, really important channel, both media channels and also the brand's own channels. A good example was the hashtag Like a Girl campaign that always ran. I don't know if you saw it. They ran a brilliant campaign to take the kind of phrase like throw like a girl or run like a girl and turn it from something kind of with negative connotations into very positive connotations. User-generated content is going to grow and grow. I'll talk about that at the next slide. I mean, it used to be the kind of the letters page. That was user-generated content. Guest bloggers, user-generated content. But now, there's new technologies out there. For example, ourselves, we've used a third-party software provider to enable us to pull in, this is for the Fáilte Ireland hub that we have on site, people's photos on Instagram and Twitter that use the campaign hashtag, and we can pull them in and create a beautiful gallery around people's holiday experiences in Ireland, and again, all user-generated content. Native content, again, it's going to become more and more important, particularly with the ad blocking that I've just talked about, and also really giving genuine value to audiences. So a good example, the one that's always held up as a brilliant piece of native was Netflix and the New York Times got together to do a piece on women's prisons to coincide with the launch of Orange is the New Black. Very successful piece. Video, That Sexy Guy from Old Spice. So again, video is becoming massively important. It just gives brands another way to kind of tell their story, often in kind of an amusing and personable way. The ways to promote video, again, are growing and growing themselves. You can do it pre-roll. You can do it in article. You can do it in an ad as part of a billboard or a pop-up or whatever that might be. So again, it's massive. I've got no sexy picture for retargeting because it's not sexy, but it's, I suppose, looking at kind of dropping a pixel into somebody's browser, really, and you've probably been there yourselves. You've been on a website, you thought this pair of shoes is deadly, I'm going to get them. Maybe not, it's not payday, and all of a sudden the shoes are following you around the internet. So it's something that we do ourselves as well, even within our own website. So if we have a native piece of content, let's just say on a new BMW car, if you've gone in to read it, we can actually, follow you around with BMW ads, because we know that that's a topic that you're interested in, and it's kind of front of mind to you. Experiential. Heineken are doing it brilliantly. I don't know if you were at Longitude there a couple of weeks ago. Sound Atlas was brilliant, and they've really kind of brought, what they do is they pick a music scene. Last year it was the kind of Brooklyn street parties. This year it's the Japanese kind of underground dance scene. They bring it to life. They reward their customers, but they also have a digital element running behind it. A very strong social campaign where you can get rewards, where you can get behind the scenes footage, and just get to be a part of this whole music scene. Design, massively important for any campaign, but particularly more and more so because we're, with kind of cross-platform and entering into the era of the wearable, a tiny little screen, you need to be able to design, put the user experience first across a range of different size screens. So obviously, massively important for any campaign. So finally, I suppose, what next? So I'm not going to look miles into the future. I'm going to let Adrian do that. No pressure, Adrian. I'm just going to look like very, very near into the future, I suppose, just from our own kind of perspective, the areas that we see growing at the moment, but they're going to continue to grow. So these are the areas to get yourself involved in. So native content, as I said, I think native is going to be used as a much more rich kind of storytelling. I'd like to see kind of a lot more quality native content being created rather than the clickbaity stuff. But also native is going to start being delivered out, not just as say an article on a site, but actually it's going to be delivered out kind of automatically or programmatically. And again, that's going to feed in with data. It's going to start targeting people with specific demographic or user behaviours. Programmatic that I've just mentioned, programmatic is kind of like the automated buying and selling of ad inventory on sites. At the moment, it probably forms a part of any media publisher's offering, but most of the stuff is still done through kind of premium ad sales direct, where we would set up the ads ourselves. Programmatic is likely to wipe out most of the direct premium guaranteed inventory sales. I would imagine that, in 5-10 years' time, all digital display ads will come in programmatically. That means that it's going to be putting a lot more control, I suppose, into the hands of the brands and the advertisers themselves, who will be able to run these ads, optimize on the hoof from their own control panels, rather than relying on ourselves. Personalization, Mick talked about it earlier on, absolutely massive for a media organisation like ourselves. Again, to be competitive against other brands and against other media organisations, we need to be able to deliver content. We need to be able to deliver bespoke advertising to the individual. So not just put up an ad and the million people who visit the site are going to see this ad. Everybody should have a very tailored solution to them, be it content or advertising, and it's a massive challenge, and something obviously that we're taking very seriously ourselves. iBeacons, again, this is when I was talking about the smartphone, the kind of geolocation. This is like a Bluetooth device that retailers can use. So again, back to the shoes, you're walking through the shop and all of a sudden you get a push notification to your phone saying, this pair of amazing shoes, ladies' red shoes, are on sale at the moment. So again, is it going to be too intrusive? Or, do the benefits of actually getting these kind of sales notifications outweigh? It'll be interesting to see how these go. But because of the creation of kind of iBeacons, it's a lot more accessible now to kind of smaller businesses and retailers. Again, cross-device and including wearables. Again, a massive growth area, and particularly wearables. There's already a kind of programmatic network called TapSense that have set themselves up specifically to wearables, even though there's no ads to serve out to them. But I think ads in the format of native content, video ads, they'll work okay on your watch. It's hard to see a display ad going on there without being too intrusive. But again, it's a really interesting area to keep an eye on. And finally, Internet of Things. So, home devices or any device connected to the internet. Samsung reckon that by 2020, all of their devices are going to be connected to the internet. So, what that could mean is you're sitting there watching TV and you get a message from your fridge to say that you're out of milk, delivered to your TV. There's obvious connotations there for advertisers to get their brand of delicious milk onto your TV. Or the TV might order it for you yourself. I don't know where it's all going to go. But I suppose, a good resource to see where these kind of cutting edge things and the Internet of Things and any other kind of cutting edge area is going is to look at Kickstarter, and the likes of those kind of crowdfunding platforms are a really good way to kind of see what's coming down the line in terms of kind of areas that you might like to pursue or study a bit further. So that's it from me. I'm going to hand you over to Adrian, who's going to look at, I suppose, the kind of the longer term picture. So thanks very much.